Welcome to the Intentional Life podcast, where it's all about real strategies, real tools, and techniques to help you truly become the author of your life story.
Hello, everyone. Oh my God, you guys, it's the third episode. Yay! We're very excited, and we also wanted to let you know that we did take a little break because both Camilla and I were traveling, and it was just a little hard to get our schedules together. But we're back now, and we're going to be releasing an episode every 2 weeks on Fridays.
Super excited.
Yes, and thank you so much for the feedback that all of you gave us. We did receive a lot of love and beautiful messages, and it really makes us very happy to hear that what we're sharing with you is resonating, because that was kind of the whole idea, is to bring you value. And actually, I was just telling Camilla the other day about that we received so much love after the first episode, which I think goes to show that vulnerability and rawness and authenticity is so important, especially today when we live in this sort of, social media world portraying these perfect lives. And being real, I feel like it's more relevant, more so than ever. And even though it's not the most comfortable place to be at, I mean, it's totally worth it. And I think it's liberating for both Camilla and I, and for you guys to hear us talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we have for you today is, I feel like, the foundation of trying to understand why, as humans, we do what we do. And it's almost like it is this secret key to opening the door to understanding ourselves better and our patterns. And this is where the 6 human needs come in to serve us. So what Camilla and I would like to do this during this episode is to briefly introduce you to all of the 6 human needs. So basically, everyone has a reason for why they do what they do. And those reasons can be pretty broadly, but at the same time, I'd say really precisely categorized into 6 reasons or 6 needs. And what I think is important to emphasize, that these are not goals or desires that they have. These are the actual basic needs that all of us share, because goals and desires are actually the consequence of those innermost needs. And we tend to usually have, I'd say, top 2, 3 human needs controlling our lives that usually tend to change. They don't necessarily have to stay the same, but it's usually 2 or 3 needs that kind of basically drive our actions and choices in life. So while we introduce these needs to you guys, you can, take the time to notice and see which ones resonate with you. And we'll also describe each need for you and also give you a little bit of advice how to basically deal with that need, how to achieve better results, how to understand yourself better. And I'm sure that's going to affect your life significantly, just knowing what drives you. I know I did this test with some of my clients, and, it's so funny how sometimes we just don't know, what drives us or what we are about. And just learning about those needs, it gave them such a huge perspective. I'm not sure, Camilla, if you've experienced that with your clients as well, when you do the test and they're like, they're blown away. Like, oh my God, how did I not know that? It just makes total sense.
Yeah, I agree. You put it beautifully, Vilma. And it's also a great framework, you guys, to understand other people around us better and why they behave a certain way, which is super important in relationships, right? So if we know that our partner, for instance, has a great need for significance, which in a little while you'll see is one of the basic human needs, we can try to compliment them on their accomplishments more often, and it will make them feel great, and it will really make an impact, right? So the more human needs that we meet for another, the closer and tighter our bond will be with them. That's something to always remember.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go on.
No, and I was just going to say that on the other hand, since you're here on this, beautiful journey of personal growth with us, I just wanted to say that oftentimes we look to experience our needs on the outside. So we're waiting for others to make us feel certain things that are important to us. But identifying what our top needs are can really help us to meet them by ourselves also, right? And by knowing what we need and reflecting on what is it that gives us that sense of fulfillment of that need, we can become very resourceful and self-sufficient, which is a great thing for, on the journey of life mastery. So it is
Yeah.
a great framework. I can't wait to share it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that really briefly, I feel like, the important point is to know that we always find a way to meet these needs, so, and also we can choose, whether we want to meet them in a healthy way. When we become conscious of those needs, we can meet them in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way or even self-sabotaging way. So then it becomes a question not whether we're going to meet the needs, but how we're going to meet those needs, and
Oh,
whether
yes.
we're gonna meet them in a sustainable way.
That's so important to always keep in mind. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, you can take away with the first one. I'm
Okay,
excited to hear it.
so let's get started. What are those 6 human needs that we all have? Remember, we all have them, but we usually have two, like Vilma mentioned, that are the most dominant ones within ourselves, right? So the first need is the need for certainty, the need to feel safe, secure, comfortable, in control of our lives and of circumstances. People with a strong need for certainty will tend to rather avoid risk in their life. They plan things carefully and don't like surprises so much. And avoiding pain is very important for them. And any kind of uncertainty will make them feel uneasy at the very least. So, if you identify certainty as one of your top needs, your strengths probably lie in being very reliable, very organized, predictable, and trustworthy. On the other hand, life is not predictable, and it is possible to be uncertain of what the future will hold, for instance, but still be happy in the present moment. So sometimes taking risks can lead to new opportunities and growth, and it's not a bad thing altogether. Also, others might perceive you as being a little rigid or controlling, and you certainly put a lot of pressure on yourself because you worry a great deal about the future and about being, safe and secure. So the goal for you, if you identify certainty as one of your top needs, would be to learn to enjoy the present moment, to come back to this present moment, to accept the fact that some insecurity is a part of life. And possibly, even you could surround yourself with fun and spontaneous people and kind of dare to do things their way from time to time. Just go with the flow and see, what they can contribute to your life with that other way of being. Um, yeah, that was the first need, certainty. And the second human need is the need for uncertainty. Now, that's funny because, that's totally the opposite of certainty. But if everything was always laid out and predictable, even the most certainty driven person would get really bored. So, if you're very uncertainty driven, you will like novelty, excitement, adventure. You might even get a kick out of some suspense or dangerous experiences. Um, you'll have many interests and be perceived as fun and interesting to be with by others. And you will probably feel best when you're enjoying life and having fun, having a good time. On the downside, you might quickly lose interest in a task or even in a person. And sometimes you might expose yourself to risky situations, physically, emotionally, or financially. You're also likely to have a lot of energy and are great at multitasking, but sometimes you have a hard time focusing or to get things done. And if you're very uncertainty driven, you'll do everything to avoid boredom and mediocrity. But sometimes, a structured routine can be very helpful. So that's something that you should always keep in mind. And I would say that your goal would be to develop a better balance between joy and excitement, which is invigorating and great, but also staying grounded, committing to relationships and to activities, and finding more stability overall. You can really find beauty and excitement in ordinary things or even in a daily routine, and also in a long-term relationship or a long-term, workplace. So finding the balance between those two poles. And now the third human need that I'm going to present to you is the need for significance. Here, your happiness comes from feeling respected, valued, looked up to, and important, special, right? You want to make sure that you feel and are seen as special and unique. You like to be a leader. You take matters into your own hands, and you'll possibly work really hard to be the leader and to, contribute a lot to your community or your company, your family. But what's also important for you to remember, if you're very significance driven, is that respect does not equal love. Sometimes people might be intimidated by you and they go along with your plans without actually agreeing with you. You can sometimes come across as a little arrogant or have trouble relating to others because of the really high standards you've set for yourself. And these standards drive you to always be on top of your game, yes, and to excel. But that can be really exhausting to do, don't you think? You might sometimes not even get the appreciation for all your efforts and just feel drained. There's a great saying that fits here, which is, heavy is the head that bears the crown. You probably heard that before. So your goal is to realize that you are special and you are worthy, even without having to prove yourself to anyone, even without getting their attention and their respect. You don't need to look for approval outside, but rather become grounded and connected to your authentic self, to your needs and your wants. Maybe sometimes you want to be reckless, or you want to spend a day watching TV. That's also okay. You don't always have to excel. And criticism is, you see it as an attack on you, but it could really be constructive and it could help you to grow further. So I would say that true love and connection are more valuable for your soul than respect. And then there's another saying that is just coming to my mind, which is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? That's a great one. Even for family life, for relationships, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Ask yourself that question the next time you have an argument with someone and feel the need to prove yourself and to be significant.
So just to add to significance, I love what Camilla just said, because, we often find ourselves in those situations where you do want to be right. And I definitely found myself in those situations, especially when it's a, close relationship where like, yeah, I'm right. But definitely, do you want to be happy? Do you want to be right? And to add to significance, also what I feel has been feeding our need for significance these days is, again, technology and being connected at all times, because that allows us to get instant gratification by getting significance from getting a like, on our picture, getting a comment. And if we feel like we're not getting that attention, we can literally invoke that by liking someone else's picture or commenting on someone else's picture. But interestingly enough, no matter how connected we feel technologically, at the end of the day, it does make you feel a little drained and empty, at the end of the day, because that connection is false. And no matter how much we want to try to deny it or substitute it, we do need real physical human connection. So that's where the fourth human need, love and connection, comes in. And I feel like that's a need that is inherent to all of us. And as it's especially can be seen on infants when they are born, because they depend on love and connection to survive in this world. And actually, there was a very interesting experiment that was performed in the 70s, where they basically took newborn babies and divided them into separate rooms. And in one room, what they did was they had really sterile, clean, perfect environment for the children, for the babies, where the nurses would come in every 2 or 3 hours to feed them. However, they would not spend time with them. They would just make sure that the physiological needs were met, and they would leave the room right away. Whereas in another room, the nurses would come in, would feed them, but at the same time would caress them and talk to them and spend time with them, touch them, look them in the eye. And what started happening really, really quickly, I think within a week, the babies in the completely sterile environment who were not getting the human connection, they started getting ill. I think there was even a death of the baby who was completely healthy physically. And that goes to show just how important love and connection is. I mean, even nowadays, when we look at our lives, when, say, we go through a breakup, it literally feels like death sometimes. Literally you feel like you're dying. And that just goes to show, again, you forget to eat, you neglect everything else, because that becomes the most important thing. Just goes to show how important it is and how sometimes we forget about that. So if you are someone who is primarily driven by the need for love and connection, what you inherently believe in is that if you are not loved and if you cannot give your love, you're absolutely worthless. So that's basically the belief that ends up driving your life and your choices in life, and partner choices, or staying in certain environments as well. And you may think, oh, well, but isn't that the same for everyone? And the answer is no. If that's, if you're driven by significance or growth, like the second need that I'm going to talk about next, you will not feel like that. So basically, your focus is usually on relationships and satisfying the needs of those that you love in any shape or form. Like that's the most important thing for you. And you also be someone who will tend to need that approval and acceptance a little bit more than other people. And you will be the one who will crave for that, storybook romantic love. And you will be the one who will maybe handle rejection a bit harder than other people, because you tend to take it very personally, because feeling loved and giving love is such a big part of your identity that when you get rejected, it literally feels like it's the end of the world. And on the plus side, if you're driven by love and connection, you'll also be someone who's extremely empathetic to people. You'll be able to relate to others really, really easily. You'll be a good listener. You'll be very generous and supportive friend, and a family member and a colleague. These are usually the people you see. And you can even think through when you're listening to this now, maybe you look at your work environment where you'll see someone who's always extremely helpful, who'll put their needs above, your needs above their needs. These are someone who literally thrive on being helpful, being there for people. Yeah. But at the same time, these are the people who have really rich emotional lives, meaning that even though it's a huge blessing, sometimes it's a curse, because they also tend to be more prone to get into these depressive moods and get really upset, because there's a lot of disappointment that can happen when you feel like you're giving everything, to all those around you, but you don't receive the same in return. Right. And I feel like for someone like that, it's very important not to mix up being needed with being loved, because they feel like if people around them need them, it means that they must be loved. And they do it, subconsciously. It's not that something we think consciously and can determine. Sometimes it's just, naturally you behave like that. So when you put other people's needs above their own, you will tend to get disappointed. And what's really important here is to make sure that you remember to love yourself first. It's such a cliche, right? Every time we say that, I laugh, right? Put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on the baby. We hear it all the time. But for people who are driven by love and connection, this is really, really important to make sure that, you put your needs first, and also you set some healthy boundaries and you learn how to say no.
Very important.
Yes, exactly. And another way I feel like when it comes to love and connection, another way that, an example that I quite like, I think is very true, is that we often also tend to meet our need for love and connection in a healthy way. For instance, by being addicted to problems. Right? Because when you are hurting, when you have an issue, you'll always have people around you, or your friends call you, check in on you, spend time with you, watch movies they don't like with you, bring you soup, show you that attention and love and connection so you would feel better. So it almost like when we see that our, us being in a bad state is getting rewarded by the people around us, that's when we'll make sure we stay in the problem zone. And I'm sure, all of you have friends like that who are constantly, there's something going on with them. There's something that, they need to tell you about. And you'll notice that whenever you try to kind of pull them out of that state, or, try to reframe that for them, be like, well, actually, it's not that bad. They just do not listen to you. They're not buying, because it's not useful for them to be happy, right? Because then their need for connection and love will not be met if they're doing good, right? Mm-hmm. So So that's, I think, that's definitely something I think all of us have experienced. I definitely have people like that in my environment where to the point I just leave them be because they choose not to, get out of that zone, right? And they continue to choose to meet their need for love and connection in an unhealthy way. So so these are the four main needs, which are basically the basic needs that we'll always find a way to meet in one way or another. The coming two needs, the fifth and the sixth one, are the so-called needs of the soul, the needs that once met is going to bring us fulfillment. So the fifth need is growth. And I think, once again, this is yet another need that is deeply engraved in us, because if we don't grow, we perish, right? We all know that. And this is something that we've also noticed in our lives, is if we see that there is progress in our life, we are happy. The achieving the results is usually bringing really short-lived joy, but it's just the progress is what we need to feel like we're on top of things. And I think that could be really seen in people who are trying to lose weight and they start exercising, right? So even though they have not reached their end goal, the dream goal, they still, you can see that they're feeling motivated and happy because they see that they're, moving forward. And for instance, growth is one of my top two needs. And I'm someone who cannot go a day without learning something new, moving forward, even if it's just watching a little video when I'm walking somewhere, or me and Camilla, we always share things, because when she's driving children to, school or whatnot, she's always listening to audiobooks, and then we share back and forth. It's like, literally, we cannot not do that. It's such a core need in that. Camilla, do you want
Also one of my top needs, absolutely.
Yeah. So I've noticed that, if I skip a day or a few without learning, I get moody. And that's how I know, this is really deeply engraved in me. So if you are also someone just like Camilla and I, who is driven by growth, you will feel like you have this constant need to develop new skills, learn, or maybe improve what you already know. And it doesn't matter which area of your life it is, be it, physical or mental, emotional, spiritual, usually all of them. People who are driven by growth are often very ambitious as well in their life. So basically, you're all about evolving. That's the key thing for you. And you also be someone who tends to be quite sufficient in your life. You don't tend to have a need to, depend on other people to make you happy. You have so much going on in your life, and you're interested in so many things, and you're curious about the world, that you'll just literally get on with your life. You're usually very active in your pursuits. And I don't know if you can say that, but I notice that usually people who are driven by growth, they don't tend to be too materialistic, because they attach the value to knowledge and also experience. So that's basically, what they care about. A word of advice for people who are driven by growth, well, for Camilla and I as well. This is something that I definitely need to implement even more in my life, because I see that is that people who are driven by growth, sometimes they're prone to undervalue their relationships, and even can be seen as a little distance, and just feel like they're a little, self-absorbed and so focused on their own growth that they tend to forget to spend time with their family members or call that friend. It's almost like they need to force themselves to do that, because this is not where their energy goes. Like, for instance, with people whose primary need is love and connection, for them it's a natural thing. For the growth oriented people, it's kind of like almost like they need to make sure they almost, me and scheduling. I schedule my sometimes checking in with my friends for myself, because I can get so carried away with a project or a book that I completely lose track of time. And so that's something that they definitely need to pay attention to, that connecting and giving to others may also be as fulfilling as gaining new knowledge or skills. And there can actually even be more pleasure in sharing than just accumulating. So it's very important for them to find that balance between growth and enjoying actually spending time, maybe not doing much, but simply connecting to the ones that they love. And also take better care of the ones that you love, right? Because once again, that's not where the natural focus goes. So that's kind of growth for you. I'm very passionate about it because, like I said, Camilla and I is kind of the one of the main needs. And I've noticed that for a lot of people in probably self-help community and coaching community, because we're part of the mastermind group, I would say majority of them have growth as one of their needs. Because when you're a coach, you naturally need to always learn and develop and, learn that new
Always.
strategy in order to serve your clients better, right? So I
Absolutely.
guess, yeah, that's a great industry for you and I, Camilla. Right.
It really is.
And the final human need, the sixth one, is the need for contribution, which is the need to serve beyond yourself. Because there's just so much that we can experience on our own. And by sharing it, it actually becomes more. We almost multiply it. And also, I feel like contribution is probably that last human need that effectively includes all the other five needs before it. Because if you are focused on contributing to others, you also have certainty that you are able to better someone's life, and also have a variety, because contribution is usually, can contribute in so many different ways, and it's also usually highly interactive. You have significance because you know that you are helping someone and you're improving someone's life. And then there is also a bond that you create with someone that you're helping, so that's a loving connection that's being met. And also, of course, you grow as a human being, you evolve by helping someone else. So, if you are someone who is primarily driven by contribution, you will feel that life is incomplete without the sense of contribution. And, you want to help or contribute to a bigger cause and leave a mark on the world. So it's very sort of grand, when you see those people who actually left a mark, like, Mother Teresa, that comes to my mind, who literally sacrificed all of her needs. I would say her probably two primarily needs were love and connection and contribution,
Mm.
because she had no possessions. All she cared about was helping others, and I'm not sure there was much significance either for her. So she literally cared just to just for helping others. It's also interesting that contribution, in a lot of self-help environment, when you have people who are in, say, depressed moods, like I said before, one of the aids that suggests to them is to maybe go volunteer or
Yeah.
help others, right? Because that's the way, when you step out of your own problems and you focus on helping others, that's the way to see that actually maybe my problems and, my little world and my pain is not actually that huge as compared to what people are dealing with. And I know that, it doesn't change the situation, but it gives you a lot of perspective. And I feel like that's also very rewarding experience when you can do that.
That's a beautiful remedy.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Helping
I
others, it
agree.
is. And what's important to remember, I think, for people who are, who are driven by contribution is, I think, quite similar to growth, is that charity also starts at home, right? So
Mm.
it's really important to start taking care of yourself and your loved ones first, because it's so easy for people who are driven by big goals to save the world to completely neglect, their family or their siblings, or, they don't care much for the environment they live in. Like, that's not something they want to spend energy on. So it's finding that balance of taking care of yourself and also contributing to the higher good. Another thing that I've noticed, I'm not sure how, Camilla, how much you can relate to that, but people who are driven by contribution, sometimes they find it more difficult to connect to people who are not driven by contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if you say, like, for instance, me, I believe in purpose and I want to spread the message. And when I started my journey, when I would connect to people who were driven by, I don't know, significance or certainty, I would find it really hard to connect, because I would be like, what do you mean you don't want to save the world? What do you mean you don't want to share the light, right?
Right.
So people who are driven by contribution, sometimes I think it would be important to be a little bit more accommodating and respectful to others who are on their own journey, having different needs that, drive their life, to be like, look, it's okay, we're all different, because you need to respect at all costs that to each their own. So just to wrap it up, we will always find a way, like I said before, to meet a need. And it really is up to us whether we'll choose to meet the need in a positive way, in a neutral way, or in negative ways. Another thing that to remember is that if a certain situation meets three or more of our needs, we will pretty much get addicted to the situation. So one of the examples that Camilla and I know is, say, for instance, if a young adult um, is staying with the parents when he should really be moving out, starting their own life, but they choose to stay with the parents, that usually means that their needs are getting met. So, for instance, in this example, it would be that their need for certainty, love, and connection, significance are being met. So that's why it makes it very hard for them to move out. Or, for instance, you have a lot of examples of toxic relationships where,
Yeah.
again, it's kind of, you can see it's not healthy, but certain needs are being met and the person feels stuck. You just
Yeah.
like, everyone tells them like, oh no, please move out, what are you doing? But they just cannot. So there are a lot of examples like that. So
A
knowing
job that you're staying in,
a
even though
job,
it doesn't really fulfill you,
right?
but it pays the
Certainty.
bills and you have
Mhm.
your position, and yeah,
Yes,
totally.
exactly. And as in everything human, I feel like there are paradoxes involved, in the experience of these needs as well. So, for instance, a person may have a strong need for certainty, but at the same time, a need for uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
So, therefore, they might constantly suffer like this inner conflict as to which need is most important to satisfy. So that's exactly what causes the state of stuckness, because they're going back and forth like, oh, I need that, but I need that. Or, for instance, the need for significance, like Camilla beautifully said before, is often contradictory with the need for love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to love someone who constantly has to feel significant and important, right? And
Right,
that
right.
that is why so many successful people that I have out there who satisfy their need for significance, they have trouble in their close relationships. And they often will say, well, they feel like they're not truly loved.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
I personally, my top human needs are growth and love and connection,
Hmm.
and even that can be a little bit of a conflict because
Oh, yeah.
growth is very much your energy goes inward because you're growing, you're learning,
Yeah.
and love and connection, your energy goes outward. And I am this like the nurturer, the caretaker. I go to great lengths to make sure that everyone around me is feeling well, and whatever I can do to help, I'll do that. But then the challenge arises when I don't put my need for growth
Mm,
first, because I'm
yeah.
pulled into so many directions. I mean,
Yeah.
small children aside, because that's just the way they are. But if you're very focused towards love and connection, then if maybe I'm like scheduled to take a course, let's just say, and then a friend calls me and says, "Hey, can we meet?" Then I'll feel really pulled into meeting that friend and seeing if she needs me or something, and not make my need for growth a priority. So there is my personal clash between those two. So yeah, our needs are very likely to clash actually in some way or
Mhm.
another.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. So we do hope that what we share with you is going to give you a new lens to look at the world through, and you'll be able to notice what's driving you and then what's driving other people. And like Camilla said, knowing that, you'll be able to also better your relationships by being able to maybe, consciously try to meet the needs, say, of your loved one,
Yeah.
right? And it's not sacrificing, it's serving them, it's serving themselves, still serving them, and serving yourself by serving them.
It's
That was
speaking
complicated.
their it's speaking their language, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, always keep that in mind. And if you don't understand what someone else is doing or saying and you feel triggered, then maybe instead of reacting, just take a little pause and think to yourself, what need are they not meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they acting this way? What need would they want to meet? How
Yeah,
could I help them to meet that need? And vice
exactly.
versa. It's also for you to know yourself really well and maybe communicate to a friend or your partner, you know what? I really need for you to compliment me more often, or to give me the security that you do really love me, or there can be a beautiful like a beautiful conversation
Yeah,
that starts on the base of those 6 human needs. So
exactly.
yeah, a great tool to understand yourself better and to understand others better.
Absolutely. And just please remember that these needs, they may change throughout the course of your life, depending of, what sort of life stage you're in, the environment you're in, any circumstances that
Mhm.
change, it may change your top needs. So this is not something that you're stuck with for life. Usually people tend to have some tendencies, but there's a lot of room to move around. So it's really cool to like do this test, or kind of, only from what we shared with you today, you can already have a feeling what your top needs are, and then revisit it a few years after and see where you're at, and then
Yeah.
see what evolution you went through, because we're always growing, always evolving. So it's a really, really interesting journey to observe.
And guys, we would love to know what came up for you. What are your top 2 needs? Any insights that you had, please share them with us in the comments, or write to us. And if you need some more help to figure out what your top 2 needs are, then we'll be happy to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love sharing this with you. If you have any questions or you want to share what your needs are, please comment below. We'll definitely respond to you, because we're very interested as well.
Yeah.
I would love to have like the percentage of what are the, driving human needs in the world, or by sex. I mean, I'm not sure if this would even make sense. Maybe it's really dispersed, but like it would be really interesting to learn. So thank you so much for tuning in. We can't wait to meet you in a couple of weeks with a new, fresh episode for you.
Take care of yourselves and speak to you soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, share, and comment, and do let us know how our tips are working out for you. You can find our websites below, and we'd love to virtually meet you there.